As was announced by Shraddhavan, we are meeting here today in memory of our great friend Natkaniji, who was like a bowl singer of Bengal. Bowl singers of Bengal, they sing about Lord Krishna in all his multifacets, especially as the lover of Radha and the Lord of the universe. So too Natkaniji sang of Sri Aurobindo at every opportunity he got to do so, keeping Savitri as the lyrics of his song Celestial. His passion for the epic and his deep love of the Kavi were contagious, and even dead hearts were quickened to life and poetry. A person who charmed all who came into his contact, a personality all sweet and admirable, and yet remained deep within a mysterious soul. He chanted the verses from Savitri and fathomed the depths of its vision, and yet remained as someone whose inner feelings could not be plumbed so very easily. His laughter and mirth were often a veil over his deep pain because of the academic world's deep ingratitude to Sri Aurobindo. Sometimes he spoke to me of this pain in his heart. Sometimes he bemoaned the status of the academia and the intelligentsia who purposely avoid the multidimensional genius that is Sri Aurobindo. Well, that was, in brief, my contact with Natkaniji. And I'm really honored to have been invited by Savitri Bhavan to speak on this occasion. And I thought of speaking on this occasion on a topic that is really very close to my heart. Maybe about a year and a half back, I started my classes of Isha Upanishad at Savitri Bhavan. And on that occasion, I read quite a lot of the Upanishads, especially Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Isha Upanishad. And the more I read about the Upanishads, the more I understood Savitri. I began to see the parallels between Savitri and many Upanishads. Then I came to realize one thing, that there is only one truth. A truth that repeats itself from yuga to yuga. Maybe in a different language, in a different style, but the one eternal truth and vision is perennial. So it is in this context that I chose to speak on the vision and the boon, Savitri and the Katha Upanishad. Spiritual life must begin when one is young. The mother had told me in 1966 or so. I could not gauge the depth of this advice fully until I read the Katha Upanishad, in which Nachiketas, a young lad of barely 16 years, ventures out in search of the true meaning and aim of spiritual life. The Upanishad emphasizes on the fact that spiritual seeking in life must be resorted to when one is young. And then that's when I remembered what the mother told me, I too was barely maybe 20 years or 18 years when I was told about that. So you see, this is again a perennial truth which we in India have forgotten, because we think spirituality, a spiritual life begins later when we have retired from our regular jobs. But what the Upanishads have told us is when we are young itself, spiritual life must begin, just as the mother reminded me once again. The Upanishad emphasized on the spiritual seeking when one is young. All the false notions established by tradition or custom must be reviewed and challenged, as was done by Nachiketas when his father Vajashravas had performed a sacrifice known as Vishwajit. The young son saw that his father was giving in charity only such cows which were weak and lifeless, by which act his father may go to worlds of misery instead of gaining the positive results of the sacrifice. So when he sees this, he himself goes to his father and says, "Father, to whom will you give me?" Then the father, out of anger, he says, "To death I give you." Because you see, the son actually went to save his father, because he knew that the cows that were being offered were not good. So he says, "Let me compensate." And then the father says, "To death I give you." So, after being given away to death by his angry father, Nachiketas goes to the abode of Yama and obtains from him 3 boons for his tapasya of 3 nights and days which he has spent in waiting for Yama. Unfortunately, when Nachiketas arrives at the abode of Yama, he is not there. So Nachiketas waits at his doorstep for 3 nights and 3 days without food and water. So when Yama arrives, his assistants tell him that there is a Brahmin child waiting for you for the past 3 days. And it was the custom in Indian tradition that when the guest comes in, you have to honor him and even consider him more like a god who has come to visit your place. So Yama calls in Nachiketas and he says, "I'm sorry for what has happened, so I give you instead 3 boons." And the first boon that Nachiketas asked for was, "Tranquilized in his thought and serene of mind be the Gautama, my father. Let his passion over me pass away from him. Assured in his heart, let him greet me from thy grasp delivered. This boon I choose, the first of 3. You see a very simple thing. He says, "When I return back home, let my father take me back calmly, quietly, without being angry." That's what a young son wants, that there should be harmony and love between the parents and himself. And on getting the first boon granted, Nachiketas ventured to ask for the second one. "In heaven fear is not at all. In heaven no death thou art not, nor old age and its terrors, crossing over hunger and thirst as over 2 rivers, leaving sorrow behind the soul in heaven rejoices. Therefore that heavenly flame which thou, O death, studiest, expound unto me, for I believe. They who win their world of heaven have immortality for their portion. This for the second boon I have chosen." So there's a gradual growth, as if I can say. First it was the father. Then the second boon that Nachiketas asked for, as you have seen, is to know the secret of reaching heaven. What do we find in heaven and how can we reach heaven? And for that, because as he said, Yama is pleased to see the young boy for only a long continuity of existence in the heaven and has no problem in granting the 2 boons. Nachiketas even gets a bonus, so to say, when Yama declared, This is the heavenly flame of Nachiketas, which thou hast chosen for the second boon. Of this flame the people shall speak that it is thine indeed. A third boon choose, O Nachiketas. So the second boon, what we hear about the flame of Nachiketas, of course, you all understand, those who have read Sri Aurobindo, this flame is nothing but the inner aspiration, the aspiring soul ascending in his consciousness. So you see already Nachiketas is reaching a higher level of consciousness, and that too Yama says is granted. Then in the third boon, Nachiketas asks for what is beyond death. That's the most difficult question now. Because he is asking Yama himself to say, what is beyond you? And there Yama hesitates. And he gives innumerable temptations which Yama had placed before him. The young spiritual seeker comes to know and realize the Atman and the Brahman which alone exists beyond death. I've given in brief the three boons which we will discuss in greater length. The third boon, beyond death, is something that Yama could not have granted. So he tempts him with all kinds of things, with riches and long life and this and that. But as we will see, Nachiketas refuses all these temptations, and then he comes to know the secret of what is beyond death. Though originating as a Vedic myth, it was only in the later centuries in the Mahabharata that the quest for immortality once again comes to the forefront in the legend of Satyavan and Savitri. She too, after losing her husband Satyavan to Yama, reclaims him by her austerities and the power of her love. Yama tempts her also, as was in the case of Nachiketas, with many boons that belong to the world of mortals. That is to say, all that still comes under the sway of Yama himself. But Savitri rejects all these temptations and regains the single boon, resuscitation of Satyavan. Interestingly, after thousands of years, this quest for immortality is once again revived and re-experienced by Sri Aurobindo in his long growth to the Supreme. This return to the luminous secrets of the past is but a cyclic resurgence of the spiritual realizations buried in the memory of collective humanity, affirmed Sri Aurobindo. The remote and dateless past, which seemed to be dead, is returning upon us with an effulgence of many luminous secrets, long lost to the consciousness of mankind, but now breaking out again from behind a veil. This was a brief introduction to tell you how this story, how this attempt, how this search for immortality continued from Vedic times to the Upanishadic times, and then it comes to the time of Sri Aurobindo. So there has been this eternal quest for immortality, and we have seen the first two stories. Now coming to the essential vision, as I call my talk, the vision and the boon, let me deal with what is this vision. Savitri is the supreme revelation of Sri Aurobindo's vision. To seek truth, light and immortality is the essence of his vision. The Katha Upanishad too is the quintessence of such a seeking, especially for immortality. Thus both the scriptures stem from the same Vedantic realizations of the two great trilogies, subjective and objective. Satchidanandam, existence, consciousness, bliss. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, truth, knowledge, infinity. This is where Sri Aurobindo gives a great hint about Upanishads and in fact the Indian philosophy. That Indian philosophy basically wants to realize the truth in two ways, the objective and the subjective way. The subjective is what we call Satchidanandam or Sat, Chit and Ananda, which all of us know as existence, consciousness and bliss. That's the subjective truth. But there's another thought which went on the objective truth. Objective is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, truth, knowledge, infinity. So these are the two channels of Indian quest for immortality, quest for knowledge. One was to realize the Brahman, and the other was to realize in manifestation what is truth and what is Jnanam, Anantam, and what is Satyam. While Savitri's vision is worked out through Savitri, Ashwapati, Dhimatsena and Satyavan, who are not just his protagonists but the incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces with whom we can enter into concrete touch, and they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way from his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. The Katha Upanishads is depicted through its character Nachiketas, whose aspirations symbolize man's immemorial quest for immortality. This is where we see, interestingly, the four characters mainly in Savitri, Ashwapati, Dhimatsena and Satyavan, who as Sri Aurobindo writes are not just characters and personalities and symbolic images, but they are incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces, and with whom we can enter into concrete touch. This is what is incredible, that even now these characters are living, their presence is living. And that's why I suppose when all of us read Savitri, we get enchanted not only by the poetic beauty and the mantric power, but the characters themselves pull us, in fact, as if inspire us, because they're living characters and forces. They're not just there as any symbolic figures. So Sri Aurobindo is very clear to say that we can enter into concrete touch, and they make human bodies, and they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way towards higher consciousness. And that was in just the vision. But what is interesting is the methodology. In the revelation and realization of the vision and the mission, both the Katha Upanishad and Savitri employ the same methodology of granting boons. In the Katha Upanishad, the boons are granted by the teacher Yama to the ardent learner Nachiketas, while in Savitri, the boons are granted to Ashwapati by goddess Savitri, and to Savitri by both death, the Vivasva, and the Supreme Divine. You see, the whole story hangs around this boon, both in Katha Upanishad and Savitri. In order to appreciate the concept of Yama, granting the boon of immortality, it would be necessary to have an idea of the root concept of the Lord of Death. Yama literally means twin, for he has a twin sister named Yami. He is actually the son of sun god Vivaswat and mother Saranyu Sanya. He is regarded to be the first mortal to die and to pass into the higher world. Having discovered the path to the next world, he is given charge to guide all those who depart this world. He is thus the deliverer, the gateway to immortality, and Dharmaraj. Remember, Mahabharata, he is the father of Yudhishthir, the upholder of justice. Yama with his three wives, Hemamala, Vijaya, and Sushila, reigns supreme in the lower hemisphere of body, life, and mind. In Sri Aurobindo's words, in the Rig Veda, he, Yama, seems to have been originally a form of the sun. Even as late as the Isha Upanishad, we find the name used as an appellation of the sun. And then one of the twin children of the white shining Lord of Truth. He is the guardian of the Dharma, the law of the truth, Satya Dharma, which is a condition of immortality, and therefore himself the guardian of immortality. So you see, already we begin to understand Yama is not just the Lord of Death, but he is also the law of the truth, Satya Dharma, is the guardian of immortality, and of course He is the twin children of the wide Lord of Truth. So Yama, who represents the Sun God or the supramental consciousness, is the best person to grant Nachiketas the three boons, out of which the third one is the most relevant for our present discussion. What was the third boon that Nachiketas asked for? Be it remembered that Nachiketas had not gone all the way to the Lord of Death only to know about after-death condition. He was not seeking a seemingly endless continuity of the heaven world. He knew that this continuity had an end. So we should not think that Nachiketas was interested in going to heaven because he asked so many things about what is heaven and how to go to heaven. Because he was well aware of the fact that there was reincarnation, the corn ripening and being born again. But after death condition and reincarnation seemed to him a never-ceasing chain devoid of meaning and purpose. But what's remarkable is this young man, this young lad, in fact, you can't even call him a man. He knew by then that there is this reincarnation and rebirth. So even if you go to heaven, it is not eternal and perennial. You have to come back even from heaven, take birth again on earth. And take birth means you come back to the grip of death. So that is not what he is seeking. So he is seeking something more. Of what use was this chain of continuity with birth and death and rebirth appearing in ever-recurring cycle? Nachiketa was seeking something more fundamental than merely the after-death condition. He formulates clearly his deep inquiry in asking for the third boon. Nachiketas asks Yama the following fundamental question. This debate that there is over the man who has passed, and some say this he is not, and some that he is, that taught by thee, I would know, this is the third boon of the boons of my choosing. Even by the gods was this debated, it is sure, and thou thyself hast said that it is not easy of knowledge. Never shall I find another like thee to tell of it, nor is there any other boon that is equal. And this is the real issue that we compare with the issues of Savitri, a third boon, which, as you can see, is asking for what is beyond death. The first one, easy. The second one, heavens, is still possible. But the third one, he said, this one only you can answer. And now we have seen who is Yama. He is the representative of the sun supramental consciousness. So according to in our own understanding, Yama is the right person to tell us the path beyond death itself. Because this is what we see reflected in Sri Aurobindo's Satyavan and Savitri. It is the supramental consciousness that alone knows what is beyond death. So this is there reflected even in the Katha Upanishad. That's what I want to bring out here. Yama tries his best to dissuade and wean away Nachiketas by offering him many temptations. He does not want to give the secret of death, for it might endanger his own existence. Remember this sentence because we'll come to it later on when we're dealing with Savitri. That to reveal his own truth is a matter of his own, the danger of his own existence. Because once he's told how to surpass death, that is, death itself is surpassed, and then the existence of death is not necessary. That's what you will see the last dialogue between Savitri and death. We'll come to that later. So Satyavan says, but the young aspirant knows what will be the end of one who lives under the shadow of the Antaka. Death is called Antaka, that means end of all. Ultimately, Yama gives in and says that the mystery of the beyond lies with Om. Here comes the ancient philosophy of Om. For this syllable is Brahman, this syllable is the Most High. This syllable, if one knows, whatsoever one should desire, it is his. Now, for the first time, Yama says, what is the way to go beyond death? That is, the secret key is the word Om. Now, what exactly is Om in the light of Sri Aurobindo, the mother? Om is the sacred sound around which centers the whole of our inner life. If the seeker is desirous of realizing the Supreme Self through the practice of Adhyatma Yoga, Om is the highest support. Om is not only Brahma and Parabrahma, but it is also the one that helps Brahman in its manifestation. It manifests to the seeker the consciousness and nature of Brahman. It is at once the Supreme One and also the essence of the phenomenal world of existence. Now we can understand the greatness of the word Om. It represents the Brahmic consciousness and simultaneously it represents the manifestation itself. And now I really, when I'm talking about it, I can imagine, I can understand, not imagine, why the mother wrote Om on the foundation stone of Matri Mandir. You see, it's really a bridge between the formless and the form. And Matri Mandir was giving a form, symbolic of the formless divine consciousness. So Om is the bridge between the impersonal and the personal, between the invisible and the visible, the formless and the form. So he says, it manifests to the seeker the consciousness and nature of Brahman. It not only symbolizes the higher world, but also symbolizes this lower world of our existence. It is with Om that the universe was breathed forth by the divine. It is the origin and source of the universe. And no doubt, I'm sure some of you may be thinking about the mother herself chanting Om. You see, one evening I was with Champaklalji. Yeah, it was my great fortune that Dipshika and myself, we could walk into his bathroom room. Any evening we wanted to. So we spent many an evening with him in his room. And one day he told us about Om, how the mother chanted Om. And he made me hear that also. I was really fortunate to hear the mother chanting Om. Of course, it was a sonorous voice. Of course, as she did it in the old days, there was a kind of a vibration, a hasty, hesitating vibration. But why did she give such a great importance to Om? Now, more and more we see from the Vedic times that this is the word that has projected forth the manifestation. So it is there, the Brahman and the manifestation simultaneously. Well, after describing the nature of Om, Yama explains to Nachiketas the real nature of Brahman as being identical with Atman. Now this is the second step. First he says, Om is the important thing, chant Om, in order to realize the Brahmic consciousness. Second he says, you have to realize your Atman. That chanting of Om takes you towards the realization of the Atman. And Atman, as all of you know in Indian philosophy, is identical with Brahman consciousness. So realizing one's Atman or realizing the Brahman are simultaneous because they are of the same nature. But there is one secret that Vedas and Upanishads have always emphasized upon. The self is not to be won by eloquent teaching, nor by brain power, nor by much learning, but only he whom this being chooses can win him. For to him, this self bears his body. The Upanishads tell us this, the Gita also tells us this, that no amount of eloquent teaching or brain power or learning can reveal the truth, the secret of Brahman. It is Brahman who chooses. I'm sure some of you may be getting the sentence in your mind. One who chooses the divine has been already chosen by the divine. You see how we find reflections of this Vedic thought in Sri Aurobindo's books here and there, but almost verbatim. So the secrets of the divine are revealed by the divine himself. It is not, you can never claim that you have done 12 years of tapasya, 15 years of meditation. You have done yoga, we have done nothing, we do nothing. It's he who chooses us. So this is again told about Nachiketas, but Nachiketas had already prepared himself, and hence thus did Nachiketas with death for his teacher win the God knowledge. He learned likewise the whole ordinance of the yoga. Thereafter he obtained Brahman and became void of stain and void of death. So shall another be who cometh likewise to the science of the spirits. So that was to give you an idea of the vision and boon of Katha Upanishad. Now, take you a little step forward. This dialogue between the student Nachiketas and Yama, the teacher, reminds us of the great teacher Yajnavalkya, who imparted to his wife the secret of immortality. I mean, it's so very interesting to see you read any Upanishad. The quest is always for the Brahman, for immortality, for knowing this world in its fullness. I mean, I was discussing with Deepshika this morning, telling this, what must have been this Indian civilization 3,000, 5,000 years back? People are only discussing what is the nature of Brahman, how to reach Brahman, how to reach this Atman. I mean, all knowledge is based only on this quest. So all the Upanishads are different ways, but they are all pointing toward this immortality, the Brahmic consciousness. Nobody is thinking about the richness of the world, how to live comfortably, how to live richly, or reincarnation, nothing. So we see here, so when asked about the property settlement between the two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani, Maitreyi replies, "Dear one, you are talking of property and its partition. But what would it avail me, even if the whole world were full of wealth were mine own? Would it make me immortal? And what shall it take me beyond all sorrows and suffering?" You see the yoga there. Katyayani and Maitreyi were two wives of Yajnavalkya, and then when he wants to retire, he calls both the wives and says, "Look, what do you want of my property? You want this much? You want this one?" Maitreyi says, "What do I do with all your property? Will all the property, all the wealth give me immortality? Take me beyond sorrow and suffering?" It's exactly, we'll see the quotation here. Even Nachiketas had also told the same thing to Yama. When Yama had offered him some riches and wealth, Nachiketas says, "Until the morrow, mortal man has these things, so end up, and they wear away all the keenness and glory of his senses. Nay, all life is even for a little. Thine are these chariots, and thine the dancing of these women and their singing." So he also rejects. He says, you may, because Yama offers him any part of the world, all the dancing girls, all the riches, all the wealth, any length of time he can live. But Nachiketas is too wise. He says, after the end of, say, I want to live 500 years, 5,000 years, but after that I'll come back to your realm of death. So he says, what's great about that? I don't want to belong to your realm. He says, take back all your gifts, the dancing of the girls, all the riches, everything well. So both Maitreyi and Nachiketas are very close to each other in rejecting the temptations. The Nachiketas further he says, "Man is not to be satisfied by riches, and riches we shall have if we have beheld thee and shall live as long as thou shalt be Lord of us." Then both Yajnavalkya and Yama reveal the secret of the beyond. The Rishi tells Maitreyi, "Lo, verily, and not for the love of the husband is the husband dear, but for the love of the self is the husband dear. Not for the love of the wife is wife dear, but for the love of the self is the wife dear. Not for the love of sons are the sons dear, but for the love of the self are sons dear. Not for the love of the wealth is wealth dear, but for the love of the self is the wealth dear. He goes on and ultimately says, the self, my dear Maitreyi, should verily be realized by hearing about, by reflecting upon it, and by meditating on it. Here you see the last secret, very practical secret, in fact it's not theory. He says, now on this sentence, not for the love of the wife is wife dear, but for the love of the self is the wife dear. Sri Aurobindo has a comment in the Synthesis of Yoga, where he says, this is not just an injunction, it is not just a truth, objective truth. He says, we have so many relations, normally we have friends and spouses and children, and whatever relations we have. He says, we have these relations because there is a self common in all of us. There is one self in me and the same self in you. So we have a relation which we have humanly named as a wife and a husband and a child and this and that. But he said that real truth is, there's only one self in all of us. So we are fallen in love with ourselves. There's no question of other. So we are done nothing great to say, hey, I love my wife, hey, I love my son. No. It is your own self that you love. But in our ignorance, I give value to my external relations. But Sri Aurobindo explains in the Synthesis saying, it is actually the truth of what the Vedas, the Upanishads have revealed, is the inner truth. If only we can realize that. And then Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi that the way to realize the self is through hearing, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, a practical method. And Yama too revealed the deepest secret of Nachiketas. Even every desire that harboureth in the heart of a man hath been loosened from its moorings. Then this mortal putteth on immortality. When all the strings of the heart are rent asunder, even here in this human birth, then mortal becomes immortal. Here you please note that two words that have been used. When every desire that harboureth in the heart of man has been loosened from its moorings. And then it says, all the strings of the heart are rent asunder. The two words, desire and this attachment. And very interestingly I found, when I was looking into Synthesis again, Sri Aurobindo writes in one chapter called The Ascent of the Sacrifice, he says, for a divine living, desire must be abolished and replaced by a purer and firmer motive power. For a divine life, the mind and the life impulse must cease to be anything but the instruments of the psychic being. For a divine life, ego must disappear. What is wonderful to see is that what Sri Aurobindo has given us in the Synthesis is again having its roots. It's not that he is imitating or borrowed. But what I'm surprised at to see is the similarity of the experiences. Obviously, that Vedic experience is common to all the great rishis in the world, wherever they may be, east or west or north or south. So even in Synthesis, we get almost the same terminology that we get in the Katha Upanishad. Now, when we come to these boons, we have seen Katha Upanishad, we have seen Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi refusing all these temptations, and we have a similar thing in Savitri. Similarly, before getting the only boon of Satyavan's life, Savitri too was tempted with 4 boons, not belonging to the realm of death, but to those regions beyond death itself. And yet Savitri refuses all of them, that the Supreme granted her, because she wants nothing for herself, but only for earth and humanity. Here are the 4 boons. Of course, I will not read out all these long passages, but the first one, thy peace, O Lord, a boon within to keep. Then the second one, we see is thy oneness, O Lord, in many approaching hearts. The third one, thy energy, Lord, to seize on woman and man. And the fourth one, as she puts it here, that all the four, then all the women yearningly replied, thy embrace, thy joy, etc. We are the four boons. But all the four boons that Savitri asked for are symbolic of Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. That's the point I would like you to ponder, reflect on. That these boons are not just boons that a human being gets. Ultimately, these four boons of Savitri represent Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. One could even delve a little longer on that, but I leave it at that more as a suggestion. And there is, as a matter of fact, only one boon that is asked for in Savitri. We may have all these four boons which are rejected, but ultimately, if you see, there's only one boon. Rest of the others given to Savitri by death or by the Supreme Divine are a prelude and a preparation to the fulfillment of the single boon which aims at a transformation of earth life, achieved by the intervention of the avatar, Savitri. Looked at from this perspective, the vision, the boon and the mission of Savitri are all one. It is to manifest the supreme reality, Sachidananda, in its plenitude upon earth, or as it is said, to spiritualize matter. That is the ultimate aim of evolution on earth, and it is the intention of the integral yoga that Sri Aurobindo practiced and propounded. This singular theme of the earth life transforming into a divine life runs in most of the major works of Sri Aurobindo. It is Ashrapati who asked for the Divine Mother for the only boon, as we must have to remember. Only, he says, I want only one boon. And what is that? Most of you remember those who are reading Savitri. O wisdom splendor, Mother of the universe, one moment filled with thy eternity. Let thy infinity in one body live. All knowledge wrap, one mind in seas of light. All love throb, single in one human heart. Immortal, treading the earth with mortal feet, all heaven's beauty crowd in earthly limbs. Let a great word be spoken from the heights, and one great act unlock the doors of faith. You see, he's asking for one. And you can see how Sri Aurobindo describes the mind, the heart and the body of this one person. One body lived, one mind in seas of light, and one human heart. And this boon was granted by the creatrix, the Eternal's artist bride. And she says, one shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. A limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved with the passions of the God shall come. All mights and greatnesses shall join in her, beauty shall walk celestial of the earth, a seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. And the one commissioned to break the iron law of death and fate is Savitri. Savitri is the only boon that the earth asks for, because it is she alone who can wrestle with the shadow and hew the ways of immortality. It is interesting to note the sequence of the other prerequisite boons. Now this is another thing that I've added. So one thing is, there's only one boon that Ashrapati asked for. And that one boon is the birth of Savitri. Now for Savitri to fulfill her mission, there are some prerequisites, what I call prerequisite boons. And yet there is a perfect sequence in that. Those of you remember that. It is interesting to note the sequence of the other prerequisite boons. Satyavan, who is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within himself, within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance, could not have been released from the grip of death until Dhimatsena, the lord of the shining hosts, who has lost his sight and his kingdom, regains them. Hence, the very first boon that Savitri asked for is the return of Dhimatsena's sight and kingdom, symbolizing the fact that consciousness and life have first to be liberated from inconscience. This is the first prayer of the Upanishadic seer. You know, this Asatoma, Satgamaya, etc. The divine mind that is entombed in inconscience has to be brought forth and given back its rule and sway over manifestation. You see, these are the things that I wanted to emphasize a little more. That why is it that Satyavan's birth is not given right in the first instance, Satyavan's life? Because there are other things. First thing that Savitri asked for is Dhimatsena's sight and kingdom. What is the meaning of Dhimatsena regaining his sight and kingdom? And what does Dhimatsena represent? Is that divine mind who is down in inconscience. So first the divine mind has to be liberated. This is Satya, the truth. Before it can come and manifest as a supramental truth, earth has to prepare itself. The evolution has to take place. So Dhimatsena regaining his consciousness means that consciousness liberated from the inconscient. That's the first step. It is only after the first boon is granted to her that Savitri decides to ask for 100 sons for her own father, Ashrapati. The second one. King Ashrapati is the lord of tapasya, the concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor, who can marshal beings carrying the consciousness of the immortal planes of consciousness. Thus we see first a link established between Dhimatsena and Ashrapati, between consciousness and force. Because without this union, no new creation can take place. It's a wonderful logic, you see. First the consciousness is liberated, then Ashrapati. Ashrapati is the lord of the forces, the energy. So consciousness and Chit are inseparably connected. Chit, Shakti. So once Chit is liberated, automatically Shakti has to be liberated. So you see in the boons also they are connected. First Dhimatsena, then Ashrapati. He's saying I want 100 children, means a new race coming up, but only with a higher consciousness. Now the third boon is that of 100 sons for Satyavan and Savitri. Obviously this is the birth of the supramental race, which would be born out of the marriage of truth and love. In fact, love cannot establish itself without truth, explained the mother. The pure divine love can manifest safely only in a ground of truth. This is a hint that we get to the mother's agenda, an extraordinary hint while talking about Savitri. She says, the pure divine love can manifest safely only in a ground of truth. So now comes the third level, that if Satyavan has to be given back, his life has to be given back, if Savitri has to come with her love. And love and truth are interconnected. As long as there is no truth, love cannot establish itself. So he says, it is therefore an immanent necessity that Satyavan, the principle of truth, is manifest as a supramental consciousness before Savitri, the principle of love, can transform death. So there is a little, you may say, sequentially first there is a death that is abolished, or death that is conquered, and then Satyavan, life is given. No, there, as per the description, it may be sequential, but as an act, it is simultaneous. It says, hence the final confrontation between Savitri and death, death asks of Savitri, show me the body of the living truth. See, now these are very important sentences. Death is asking Savitri, show me the body of the living truth, or draw from me the outline of draw for me the outline of her face, that I too may obey and worship her. Now you see, death is beginning to see that it wants to worship the face of truth. Now the importance of truth is coming in. Then will I give thee back thy Satyavan. You see, this is the beauty, that once truth is established, love will come back. Love will be established. Satyavan means love between Savitri and Satyavan. But before that, the truth has to be established. So once truth comes in, automatically Satyavan will come in, because Satyavan and Savitri, they represent the divine love and grace. So you see, there is a logical sequence in the both that are being asked for. So the incarnation, thrusting aside its veil and showing her living reality, was an act of supreme grace and love, which hastened the transformation of death into its true transcendental self. This transformation of death and the release of Satyavan were, I believe, simultaneous, because one act involved the other. Death donning its aspect of the eternal, and Satyavan being released from ignorance and getting transformed into the supramental consciousness are the necessary steps of Earth's evolution. The eternal negation born of the inconscient is the Mrityu. Now I'm coming to a point where a little more clarity I'm trying to understand the difference between death and Yama. As all of you must have noted, Shravinda does not use the word Yama in Savitri. And yet we have seen Yama mythologically also represents the Vivasvan, the son of sun god. So what is the difference in that? The eternal negation born from the inconscient is the Mrityu that Vedic rishis had referred to in their immortal prayer to the Supreme, Asutoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, and Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. It is death that is the companion, though the most obstinate and resistant one of all the four emanations that were born of Aditi, but ended up in becoming their very opposites. Consciousness and light became unconsciousness, truth turned into falsehood, and life into death, and bliss into suffering. In fact, the essential nature of death is depicted very graphically in Savitri. When Savitri, the incarnation, thrust aside her veil and looked into the eyes of death, life coursed a splendid agony through his nerves, and death tried to resist that light by calling up all his strength, which consisted of night, hell, inconscience, from which he was born, his vast sustaining self. So what is the meaning of death here? Death is a night, is hell, and is inconscience. The dire universal shadow disappeared, vanishing into the void from which it came. Death is indeed a universal shadow of the Absolute, because the inconscient is as much an aspect of Satchidananda as the superconscient is. And this is something that we need to understand in the light of Sri Aurobindo, that both the superconscient and inconscient are the two sides of the same coin called the Brahman. So we cannot, although death is born from the inconscient, it is not anti, it is the same other side of the coin. So in a way, when we say that Vivasvan is the son of the sun god, it is true. Although the sun god represented here upon earth, as Savitri herself tells us, O death, thou art God and yet not he, but only his black shadow on his path, as leaving the night he takes the upward way, and drags with him his clinging inconscient force. Of God unconsciousness, thou art the dark head. Of his ignorance, thou art the impenitent sign. Of his vast tenebrous womb, the natural child. On his immortality, the sinister bar. All contraries are aspects of God's face. A brilliant summary. So death, supreme Brahman, all are contraries but are the same God's face. Perhaps we could differentiate the two realities of death in this manner. Mrityu of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad belongs to the second creation the mother speaks of in her story of creation. I'm sure all of you have read the story of creation by the mother. So, the first creation was that four aspects come out of Aditi, who mess up the whole thing, they get to the opposite, and consciousness becomes unconscious, life becomes death, etc. Then the mother tells her there was second creation when the divine tells the mother that you make a graded creation now, from supermind to overmind to this, there's a graded creation. So this death, Mrityu, belongs to the second creation the mother speaks of. Whereas Yama of Katha Upanishad belongs to the first creation referred to by her. The former is an involutionary being, while the latter is an evolutionary one. Perhaps this is the reason for which death was not able to grant the only boon that Savitri was asking for, nothing I claim but Satyavan alone. Seen in this light, Nachiketas represents individual aspiration for immortality, and Yama, the cosmic godhead, is the one who leads the individual to the transcendent reality. Nachiketas swiftly passes through the stages of aspiration, rejection and surrender, and realizes not only his individual self, the Atman, but also achieves the cosmic consciousness, the heavens, the secrets of which are laid bare to him by the cosmic power Yama. By virtue of attaining his third boon, the secret of death itself, young Nachiketas gains an identity with immortality, with the transcendent. Nachiketas, the dormant consciousness stuck in ignorance. Yeah, that's the meaning of Nachiketas, I didn't tell you before. Nachiketas is the dormant consciousness stuck in ignorance, is awakened and becomes one who is full of Brahmic consciousness. In Sri Aurobindo, the entire concept of immortality is different, both in the process and aim. He aims at a total transformation and a collective immortality. To live in the divine and have the divine consciousness is itself immortality, and to be able to divinize the body also and make it a fit instrument for the divine works and the divine life would be its material expression only. Now coming to the end, hence the battle is between two cosmic forces and powers, between Savitri and death. Because it's a total transformation that they are attempting. It's not an individual Nachiketas who wants to realize Brahman. Now it is a totality. It is between the manifestation in ignorance and the transformation. So there's a kind of equal fight between Savitri and death. In fact, they are both representatives of the transcendental cosmic consciousness. Their battle for the soul of Satyavan is symbolic of how the cosmic power, death, wants to keep the individual always under its grip, whereas Savitri wants to liberate the individual from the laws of death and fate and transform and enable the individual as well as the earth consciousness to receive the supramental consciousness. Death fights to keep man as a mortal body. Savitri fights to make man immortal in an immortal body. The Katha Upanishad is a precursor to the conquest of immortality, while Savitri is the divine's promise and its fulfillment. In Savitri, the theme of earth's transformation is depicted through the four personalities, as we said earlier, Satyavan, Dhimatsena, Ashrapati and Savitri, who symbolize respectively Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda, existence, consciousness, energy or force and bliss. You can see Satyavan is the Sat, Dhimatsena is the consciousness, Ashrapati is the Tapasya, is the force and energy, and Savitri is the bliss. Just as the four aspects of the Supreme Mother, Mahasaraswati, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati, are one and inseparable, so too these four personalities are interdependent and fulfill together Earth's evolutionary destiny, which passes through the stages of God, light, freedom, immortality and bliss. Thus, Sri Aurobindo Savitri symbolizes Earth's adventure of consciousness and delight, culminating in a complete manifestation of Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda. In this manner, etched beautifully in mantric verses, Savitri's vision upholds that of the Upanishad, that of the manifestation of Sat, Chit, Tapas and Ananda. The Katha Upanishad fulfills the steps of individual yoga through the yoga of Nachiketas, while Savitri fulfills the collective yoga and the transformation of earth life through the intervention of Savitri, the avatar, the world redeemer and the goddess of grace and love. While one focuses on the subjective realization of the Brahman, the other compels the objective manifestation of Satchidananda. While the Katha Upanishad shows the individual path to a swift ascent to the immortal and the eternal, Savitri bears the path of the ascent to the supramental consciousness and its descent on earth consciousness in totality. The Katha Upanishad raises hopes for man's spiritual destiny, while Savitri fulfills the promises given to mankind. This is what my study has given me, the parables about the boons. This is what I have put together. One could have expanded a lot more, but I remember my 60 minutes period that has been given, and I think I have fulfilled my promise to Shraddhavan. I told her I keep to my timing. So I had to rush a little bit, I could not explain further. But if I had taken a class as usual as I do at Savitri Bhavan, maybe I could have expanded a little more. But I think we have time limits, but I've packed the whole thing here. And let's see further if I can expand it further. Well, Shraddhavan, thank you so much, and I think it's been a